One of the biggest media mergers in American history is happening right now, and it's going to affect everything, including this app, so I'm going to explain it all right now. Now, what are these companies? Because it gets kind of confusing, but Warner Brothers Discovery is Discovery Channel and all of its assets, and Warner Brothers. That also includes HBO, CNN, HBO Max, the streaming platform, and a storied library of content. Like, whenever people talk about IP, they're talking about intellectual property. Well, Warner Brothers has the best IP. They've got Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, all the way back to Wizard of Oz. They've got this massive amount of intellectual property. Why? Because they're one of the oldest movie studios and arguably like the most prestigious. Like, I think when you think about Hollywood, like, there's something really special about Warner Brothers and its storied studio lot, which is in Burbank, which is prime real estate, an incredible lot. A lot of people want that lot. And they're being bought. They're being bought by Paramount Skydance. That includes the storied movie studio of Paramount, which a year ago was bought for $8 billion by David Ellison and his production company Skydance, which mainly did a bunch of action movies. Now, who's David Ellison? Well, he's the son of Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, one of the largest technology companies in the world and one of the world's richest men, worth about $200 billion. Oracle, we don't use Oracle as people, but it's everywhere. It's a data enterprise company, so like company software runs on Oracle, and they also have a cloud computing side of the company, and now they're getting into data centers. Like, they just did a huge $100 billion deal with OpenAI, although that I could talk a lot about that because unclear what's going on there. And so they've bought it. I guess it just got approved by the board of Warner Brothers. The pay packages of the CEO and the executives actually got scolded for being too big, because the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery stands to make $1 billion from selling the company. And so this deal is likely to go through. Why? There's going to be regulatory challenges based on antitrust. Like, is it bad that we have these two massive media companies merging together? Is that an antitrust violation? I think it's unlikely that it will stop. One, the Ellisons are friends with the administration. It's likely to get an inside track. But honestly, also because it's not really clear that this would result in antitrust concerns. When we talk about antitrust, we're like, will this make the market for, in this case, we're mainly talking about the streaming and the linear market. Linear is like traditional television. Will it make those markets less competitive? And honestly, it probably won't. It will hurt individuals in this industry because a lot of people will get laid off. But in terms of antitrust, it probably won't. It wouldn't create a monopoly or anything, because Netflix is the big dog. And Netflix tried to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. In fact, they got a deal approved for $80 billion just for one side of the company, just the Warner Brothers movie studio and HBO Max. Then the Ellisons were like, whoa, we'll pay more. We'll pay Netflix $2.8 billion to cut this deal off, and we'll spend $111 billion to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. The deal is likely to go through. And whenever a private equity person or someone mentions the concept of a synergy, just know that means a bunch of people are going to get laid off. Because what is a synergy? It's duplicative, a duplicative job. It's a duplicative spending that you can cut to streamline efficiencies and achieve profitability. And so they're going to probably lay off a bunch of people. Why? Because Warner Brothers Discovery operates a streaming network, linear channels, and a theatrical movie release studio. What does Paramount Skydance do? All of that. That's exactly what they do. If Netflix had bought it, actually, which a lot of people were concerned about Netflix buying it, and that actually, I think, would have been a stronger antitrust concern. If we throw HBO Max in with Netflix, what do these other streaming platforms have? That is tough. Especially because Netflix is the biggest, the most profitable. They outspend everyone on content in this industry, and they have the most subscribers. They have hundreds of millions of subscribers across the world. But they probably wouldn't have fired as many people because they don't have a theatrical movie release studio. And a lot of the synergies that Netflix said existed were really just because Netflix spends $1 billion to Warner Brothers and HBO to license their content onto Netflix. That's how valuable I'm talking about this content library is that Warner Brothers and HBO have. Anyway, deal's likely to go through, but what does that mean? Now we have one family, the Ellisons, that control Oracle, huge technology company, Paramount, huge storied movie studio, and they're about to control Warner Brothers and HBO. They're also going to control CBS News and CNN. Wait, but what else? They own 15% of this app, TikTok. Larry Ellison was part of the contingent of investors along with Silver Lake, this private equity fund that bought this app. So that's just a lot of power concentrated with one family that I think would make anyone a little uncomfortable and skeptical. I think in terms of what it means for this industry, they're promising to release 30 movies a year, which is like the combined amount that Warner Brothers and Paramount would release on their own. Now, will that continue to happen? I don't know, but they said it verbatim. David Ellison said that verbatim. What will it mean for like us, the consumer, in terms of streaming platforms? Unclear. I would imagine, and likely what will happen is that HBO will keep operating on its own because the team there is so successful. Like, they constantly make incredible content, and even though they're a smaller team, they win more Emmys than anyone else. It would be ludicrous to mess up what the CEO, Casey Bloys, is doing. And Paramount is probably going to invest a bunch of money. I mean, they have deep pockets now. They're going to invest a bunch of money in content. They already invested like $8 billion in getting like WWE. My car just turned off. But yeah, so these companies are merging. It's totally unlikely to get blocked, in my opinion. It will likely be approved. There will be a new day in Hollywood, and unfortunately, I would imagine many people will get laid off. And now you might be asking though, why does Warner Brothers even have to be sold? They were so successful. Well, Warner Brothers has had an absolute terrible run with media mergers. Warner Brothers used to be owned by AOL, then it was owned by AT&T, and then they had this Warner Brothers Discovery merger. There was an absolute destruction of value. Like the CEO who's about to get paid $1 billion. It's not all his fault, but Warner Brothers Discovery, the stock went down to like $6 or $7 a year ago, and now it's being sold for $31, $32 a share just because of the bidding war for the IP library. Nothing to do with the balance sheet or the bottom line, really. And so they have all this debt. Like from those past media mergers, Warner Brothers Discovery is saddled with like $40 billion of debt. And so despite the fact that HBO Max is profitable on its own, the movie studio had a great run last year. It was super successful with One Battle After Another, Weapons, Minecraft, Superman, tons of successful movies. But they still have all this debt. And despite that streaming side becoming profitable, it also has all these linear channels from the Discovery side. Think CNN, TNT, Discovery Channel itself. All those linear networks are shedding subscribers and starting to shed money. And they used to be super profitable. And so they were relying on that money. And basically no one in Hollywood anticipated how fast people would start cutting cords. And so it's shaken up a lot of these companies as they've had to rapidly get like their streaming networks profitable, invest tons of money in content so that you have something to watch. And simultaneously, they're shedding subscribers from the linear side. And so they are left in a bind. That's why they were trying to, before the sale, they were trying to split the company and send all that debt off to pasture with the dying dying linear networks and keep the profitable movie studio and HBO Max together. But before they could do that, David Ellison was like, let me swoop in, buy this company. It is a crazy concept. Like, Paramount Skydance is probably worth like $8 billion. That little company is taking on hundreds of million dollars in debt, personally guaranteed by Larry Ellison, one of the wealthiest men in the world, to purchase Warner Brothers Discovery. But he's also been left in a bind because a lot of rumors have swirled about the Oracle profitability. The deal with OpenAI is very unclear, and it's worth a ton of money for the Oracle bottom line, like $100 billion, and their stock has plummeted like 30%. And so they're also left in kind of a bind. Like, how much more can they keep investing? They have, what seems like limitless money, but I promise there are limits to money, and this is an expensive industry and an expensive endeavor. And so that's just basically what's going on. We have these huge legacy media studios all merging. And it's really all about a new dawn and a new era in Hollywood because streaming has totally changed the game. The box office does appear to be recovering, but even movie studios have never been the same since COVID. And now we have a mass amount of consolidation. And we can debate whether or not that's necessary or good, but I do think we should all just be watching carefully as one family controls so much of our media industry.